directly to me.
The only thing I want to say is I accept responsibility for whatever you give me.
All right.
Except what you give me.
All right, thank you for those comments. Mr. Broncho, are you fully satisfied with the representation Mr. Archibald and Mr. Thomas provided?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Archibald, any legal reason I should not impose sentence today?
No, Your Honor.
All right. And Mr. Bronco, could you please stand for me? Mr. Bronco, based on your previous plea of guilty, it is the judgment of this court that you are guilty of murder in the first, in violation of Idaho Code 184001. You're also guilty of aggravated battery with the use of a deadly weapon, violation of Idaho Code 18907. In preparation of today, I looked at the entirety of your file. That includes the pre-sentence report. That also includes anything else that was filed with this court. For every sentence, the court must keep in mind the objectives of sentencing, and those objectives include punishment, rehabilitation, protection of society, and deterrence for you and others. I also have to look at Idaho Code 192521, which includes factors as to reasons why a court would impose a prison sentence. Given the murder charge, you have to face at least a minimum prison sentence, but just so you understand those factors include that prison should be warranted when a lesser sentence would depreciate the seriousness of the defendant's crimes. Imprisonment would provide an appropriate punishment and deterrence for the defendant and others. Imprisonment would provide appropriate opportunity for the individual who has found himself multiple offender, or what's called a professional criminal. When I looked at your PSI, I'm going to note some things that have been brought up either by your attorney or the state's attorney. You really do not have a significant adult record, but you haven't been an adult for very long. You do have a significant juvenile record. As your own attorney indicated, it started when you were about 13. You have spent significant time incarcerated. You yourself made the comment, as referenced by Mr. Neal, that you're institutionalized. You don't know how to act out in public. You have a felony conviction in federal court. You're currently on parole. You were on parole at the time of these crimes. And you also have pending 4 felonies, all of which were alleged to have occurred after the crimes in this matter, as referenced by Mr. Neal. They all occurred while you have been incarcerated in Bonneville County Jail. You were only 23. In my mind, that's a mitigating factor. Science has told us that the brain doesn't really fully develop until you're 25. That is not an excuse, Mr. Bronco, but it's a reality that young people have to work harder. You didn't take advantage of some opportunities that you had while incarcerated before. You have an LSI score of 42. A little bit more on that. Basically, those are questions that are posed to you. It's an actuarial table. There's a statistical correlation between that number and the likelihood that somebody would commit a crime in the future. The higher the number, the more likely it is. And you're sitting with a very high number. And I don't think that's a surprise to you given your brief life. The largest aggravating factor, in my opinion, is although we talked about you don't have much in the way of an adult felony history, your history just speaks of violence. The crimes that you've been charged with and that you have been convicted of typically are the violent crimes. You had, going back to your juvenile record, you've had a weapon while on school grounds. You had burglary charges as a juvenile. A couple of those. And battery on certain personnel while you were incarcerated. The federal prison term, as indicated by both counsel, involved stabbing of another individual. And your pending charges also include claimed, not proven yet, but claimed batteries on. You were non-compliant with prior probationary terms. You wound up in JCC for that. You were only released on parole August of 2023, and within a half a year, you're involved in this crime. I have concerns with respect to taking responsibility, Mr. Broncho. I know you're saying you take responsibility. In your PSI, you indicated you took responsibility, but I gotta be honest, you did it kind of in a roundabout way. Your version of events talk about having an acquaintance that you knew from prison to whom you owed a favor. That was the individual who came in the front door, you were in the back door. That was the individual who pulled a weapon. You did take responsibility in your version by saying you were the one who provided the weapon, you were there. So there's a measure of responsibility, but your version of the events, Mr. Broncho, is the only version of events that was ever propounded that involved this other individual. Neither of the victims indicated there was another individual. The other individuals with whom you were with that night all indicate you went into this building alone. So while you take somewhat responsibility for your involvement, it is a measured responsibility because you seem to still be promoting a story that I find incredible, that there was another individual involved. Your history includes acting out because you felt disrespected without any check on your emotions and trying to find a different way to act. You do have mitigating factors. It is clear that your upbringing, I would not wish on anyone. You don't set the table at the beginning, and opportunities you might have had just don't exist. You do have some support. Your mother apparently is very supportive of you, even though while you were growing up, she herself was struggling through the system. But you do have some family support. Indicated you've expressed some remorse. You do have long-term mental health issues that were outlined by Dr. Landers and indicated by your own attorney, which includes PTSD, some indication of auditory hallucinations, paranoid delusions. You do have substance use as indicated by Mr. Archibald. And again, all of those starting when you were at a very young age and continuing on. I found it interesting, Mr. Broncho, on your values and outlook that you indicated that children are innocent, need to be motivated to do well and do the right thing. You're 100% correct. Again, you weren't given some of those opportunities, but you sit here as an adult and you had terms in incarceration as a juvenile. The hope was that you would take advantage of those opportunities. You also indicated you want to be a role model to kids going down the path you did. I think that is commendable. Mr. Broncho, we were all role models at all times. Right now, you're not a good one. You are a role model. I'd like to think maybe you have an opportunity at some point in the future to get your story out there. I'd like to think you have an opportunity to start that today. But so far, you haven't shown the court that you want to make that change. And again, the most telling for me is if I were to believe the allegations of the other pending charges, you have not been a role model prisoner. In fact, you've been quite the opposite. You've placed yourself in a situation where you just continue to show your violent tendencies. The state picked up on things I picked up on with respect to Dr. Landers. You can continue to display violence in the absence of remorse of the victim, empathy during the current incarceration, defendant unwilling to commit to change at this point, individual will likely continue to display patterns similar to the past, will likely experience the need for high levels of management and security while in prison due to continued violence. The outlook for you, Mr. Bronco, is not very good as we sit here today, and I must focus on what I have today, with the biggest piece being the protection of society, because as you stand before me, you are violent and dangerous, just given your own history. The best way to protect society, obviously, is incarceration, and you also understand that because you yourself agreed that at a minimum I should sentence you to a 25-year determinate period of time. So I take that as a recognition of what you've done and what should happen. With all of that being said, Mr. Bronco, it is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to the custody of the State of Idaho Department of Corrections as follows. For count 1, murder 1, for a minimum determinate period of time of 35 years with an indeterminate period of time of life. For count 2, aggravated battery, that you be sentenced to a minimum determinate period of time of 10 years followed by a 5-year indeterminate period of time. Those sentences will run concurrent. Will impose fines in count 1 of $10,000 and in count 2 of $3,000. You will pay court costs. You will order. There was a motion for restitution that was filed with a total amount of $73,858.84 with a request that it be left open for future medical expenses. We will order that restitution in that amount. With the proviso that it will be left open if there are additional restitution requests. If there are additional future restitution requests, Mr. Bronco, you will have the right to have a hearing on those. I won't just automatically impose them, but I will leave it open in case there are more out there. We'll issue a civil penalty of the amount of $5,000. Reimbursement to the county or state for public defender services in the amount of $1,000. Mr. Bronco, do you have any questions about the sentence I have imposed?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Archibald, is there anything I said that needs to be corrected or clarified?
No.
Mr. Neal?
Victim relief and court costs.
Victim relief was $5,000 and court costs were also ordered. I just didn't order the amount of court costs because I don't know what they are. They will be the standard amount. Anything else?
Nothing for the statement.
All right. With that, Mr. Bronco, I need to advise you, you have the right to appeal my decision. You have 42 days to file that appeal. If you think my decision is illegal or too harsh, you have the right to seek relief under Idaho Criminal Rule 35. You have 120 days to seek relief under that act. You can always seek relief under the Idaho Uniform Post-Conviction Relief Act. You have 1 year after your appellate rights expire to seek relief under that act. You have the right to have an attorney assist with all of those appeals, and if you cannot afford one would be appointed. You understand your appellate rights?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you have any questions about what we did here today?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Archibald, anything else in this matter?
No, thank you.
Mr. Neal, anything else in this matter?
No.
With that, Mr. Bronco, I will...
Just a quick question. On the $1,000 public defender fees, do you want that split between the two charges or just?
Just...
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. With that, Mr. Bronco, I will remand you to the Bonneville County Sheriff. He will eventually turn you over to the Idaho Department